Shane Jasmine Young, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. So, and especially on a Saturday, you came on. Let's see, it's almost 5 o'clock on a Saturday. So, taking time out of your weekend, I appreciate it.
You know how it is as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. We make time for the things that are important to us, and it's not work for me.
Absolutely. It's interesting about all your social media posts. I went through a lot of stuff, and even in the survey we had you fill out, it was just interesting how community-minded you are. And I wonder where that comes from.
Growing up, so my parents are actually from South America. So they grew up as teenagers here in the States. And I just remember when I was, little, my mom always had us, volunteering, and community was just important. And, as I went through school, it was something that was expected, in our household, but also, through the different organizations that I was affiliated with. So I think starting out as a young person, it was already something that I was used to doing, that I enjoyed doing, and have just continued contributing and participating in community service in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. What is your favorite community activity to do right now?
Right now, I would have to say our Women Decision Makers events. So we started this group called Women Decision Makers almost about the same time that I started my law firm.
When was that? What year was that?
So I started the law firm in 2017, and I've been an attorney since 2005. So, but the firm we started in 2017. Within that same year, I would say we started putting on these events for women specifically in our community. And the reason why we started it was because we were seeing that in the work that I was doing. I primarily do estate planning. We were seeing that women were the ones that were driving that mission for their families. And so it was actually my husband's idea. We worked together, and he said, you know what, you should start a group for women, and just invite all women. We had all these different ideas. So we invite women in the community. Every other month we host a breakfast or a brunch type of event. So it's usually the last Wednesday of every other month. And the next one will be November 20th, which will be the end of the last one for this year. So then next year, 2025, we'll have them going.
Why do you think that women are the ones that drive the estate planning the most?
I think because there's been a shift in family dynamics, and because, women do tend to live longer than our male counterparts. We are the ones that are kind of taking care of the older generation. We tend to be caretakers. We are taking care of the younger generation. And so I think there's just been more of a push and more of an awareness around the importance of planning and having our affairs in order. Because when we don't, ending up in probate, getting taxed, ending up in conflict, those are things that we all want to be able to avoid. And so I think we're now just more aware, more educated, and more empowered to be able to plan for ourselves and our families.
Yeah. So you've been doing those events since 2017?
Yeah. 2018, I think, for WDM, for Women Decision Makers.
That's interesting. That's inconsistent. Have you been consistent with it?
Yeah. We've done, even through the pandemic, we started out actually doing the events at my office, and the first few events we had about 40 or 50 women. And
that's a good turnout at the beginning. Nice.
And we didn't market it. This was just something kind of organic. And then it started gaining a lot more traction. And right before the pandemic, it was January of 2020, we had an event, and we had over 100 women show up for that event. Then, of course, the pandemic happened, and then we shifted to doing the events virtually.
Yeah.
So we did that for a few months, and then we brought it back. We were doing like a hybrid. Of course, we were wearing masks and the whole nine, and so we were broadcasting it virtually for those who couldn't attend or didn't want to attend in person, and then people were attending in person as well. The last few years, we've been back to pretty much all in-person events for this, and we've had it at different venues, but this year we've actually been hosting them at Via Brazil. It's a Brazilian steakhouse here, so if you haven't been there, you should check it out. Anna Gomes is a client of ours, a friend of ours, so we try to support other business owners, other women in the community.
It's good. That's a great idea. Yeah. I kind of think you're crazy that you would start a law firm and then right after that start this other organization.
Right.
What was that like?
It actually is one of the things that I love to do because I love to be out in the community talking to people. And this event in particular is focused on different things that we as, women professionals, kind of are facing in our personal and professional lives. So we have different topics, different themes. I'll bring in speakers. So it's educational. We sponsor the brunch afterwards at the restaurant. So, it's just a fun event for us to be able to have and connect and collaborate. And of course, it brings awareness to what we do in the community, the work that my law firm does, but also it's a way for us to build our network of people that we can refer business to. And so there's a lot of business that happens within that group. It's almost like a good ecosystem.
What I think is really cool is that you were able to sort of capitalize on, you have this passion for this thing. It fits in with your values, but you're also able to market the firm at the same time, and they're really consistent with each other. And I think that's really cool.
Right. And it is something that just, people know us for now, doing these types of events in the community. We include our family in it as well. So it is focused, the majority of the attendees are women, and very diverse, from lawyers, doctors, all types of business owners, some stay-at-home moms, some young professionals, young women that are starting out. But I try to include my parents and our family members. So our parents will come, my mom, Charles's mom, his
whole
dad.
Family affair. I love it. Yeah.
Our siblings, and then we have 5 daughters. And so I think that's another reason going back to what you asked, why start this group.
Yeah.
As the mom of 5 daughters, I feel like I have, a duty and obligation to show them that, there is this community out there, and we need to create healthy relatimes and be there to support each other.
Yeah, when I saw that you had 5 daughters, I was like, oh my gosh, that's we have 3 kids. It's boy, girl, boy.
Oh, okay.
But you have 5, and
5
that's
girls.
just so crazy. What are their ages?
So my youngest is 13, and so Samara's 13, Cameron is 15. Kaylin is 16, and then Kyra and Shira are twins, and they're 24. So I had my twins when I was actually pregnant with them when I graduated from college.
You're kidding.
I was 5 months pregnant with them. So they weren't planned. This was not a planned thing. But I graduated with being pregnant with them from Pepperdine, and we moved back to Las Vegas where our family was. So Charles and I were in California going to school. He was modeling, and we came back home. I had them I graduated in April of 2000. I had them in August. And I was actually supposed to start law school that fall, but
Right.
Of course we had babies. So I took that year off, and on their first birthday, I started law school at Boyd.
So
Here in Las
cool.
Vegas.
How did you overcome that? So I'm sure you've seen this with friends and family where like they take a break from college. Like I'll go back. Like I'm gonna after my junior year, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna go back. You know, or I'm gonna take a year off from law school. You skipped your first year of law school, right? Is that what?
So what happened actually? I graduated from high school here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I was a valedictorian, and I actually had some AP credits. So like for the young people out there, like it's worth it to
Sure.
take these classes because I had basically a semester's worth of credits going into before I even started college.
That's excellent.
So and then I took, just a full loads. I took some summer classes. So I graduated from undergrad in 3 years. And
Very
so I was
nice.
actually a year ahead. So when I got pregnant, I wasn't planning on taking that time off, but I was like, okay, well, like, I'm going to have these babies. I'll take this year, be home with them. And then, so I basically deferred my law school enrollment for that year, and then graduated in three. Actually, I started in the part-time program that first semester. So I graduated in 3.5 years.
So how did you overcome that? Because a lot of times it's not necessarily the delay; it's the being away from it and getting back in the routine of school.
It was tough.
So how did you get around that?
So I do understand why people will say, just go
Straight
straight through because it is difficult to make that shift. Like you're in that mode of going to class and studying, and then my life completely changed. I got married, I had babies.
Not just one kid, but two kids.
Right,
Yes, right off the bat, yes.
And so that was a huge transition for me, being like basically a young college kid. I was 21 to having a husband, having like these babies and, learning how to manage, not sleeping, with having newborns. Thankfully, my twins were actually very good babies and they good as far as, schedule wise. They slept through the night at 7 weeks and
that's very
blessed.
good.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah, but it was tough, going back to school when they were still little. They were one. I started on their first birthday. So I really did have to kind of get back into the flow of school and that type of schedule. And law school is so different than any other type of schooling, that I've ever had. And academics tended to come pretty easy to me. Of course, I needed to put effort in, but law school was something totally, totally different. And I remember getting my grades after that first semester, and thankfully, I only had 3 classes that first semester because they were the worst grades of my career ever. So, yeah. But thankfully, I learned, I was like, all right, I was going in the nighttime program that first semester, and I was like, okay, no, I need to just go during the day. So my husband and I switched our schedules. I was able to go to school full-time during the day, and I did much better, thankfully.
Yeah. Was there ever a point where you're like, okay, so you had that delay and then the grades came back not what you wanted? Mm-hmm. Like, would you ever think, I just can't do this?
I don't think I ever thought that. I just knew that I didn't really have a choice but to do better. And part of it was ignorance. I started law school and I didn't really know any attorneys. I was the first attorney in my family on both sides, and even on my husband's side too. So I didn't really have anyone there to kind of guide me through it. Thankfully, we had really good resources. The law school, the administration here was phenomenal and is still phenomenal. And so I just, leaned on them to guide me through those next phases. And
that's excellent.
And, they were very supportive. Thankfully, we had a lot of support here with family too. And I just, I was just grinding.
Yeah. Well, where do you think that drive comes from?
I've always been a go-getter. I'm the firstborn also. And so
makes sense. That drives. Okay. Yeah.
Like that independent kind of, figure it out. And that's what I found through my childhood to my adulthood and in my professional career. I've had these plans and they don't always work out the way that we anticipate, but I know that even when things don't go according to plan, it'll end up working out the way that it's supposed to. And I just got to keep getting up. We're not going to win every challenge, but I just use the lessons that come along the way and learn and just get up and keep going.
Yeah. So I want to fast forward to 2017,
okay.
And you had worked for a prestigious law firm. You had a really successful career. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what inspired you to take that leap and then launch your firm.
Yeah. So I was scared, actually. It wasn't something that I set out to do when I went to law school. And one of the reasons was because my dad was an entrepreneur. And growing up, he actually started an airline here in Las Vegas.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. But unfortunately, he hired an attorney, and the attorney, and with the help of some third parties, actually took advantage of my dad and kicked him out of control of his own airline, ran it into bankruptcy. There was litigation. My dad, unfortunately, ended up losing the case. And so it was tough growing up. That happened while I was in middle school, and the case wasn't settled until I was in college. So there was a lot.
Whoa.
Yeah, I went up to the Nevada Supreme Court. So it was tough, growing up and seeing my family go through that, seeing the hardship that my dad had to endure, and just the emotional side of it, not even the financial side. Yeah. But of course, the financial part of it was hard. So when I decided to become an attorney, one of the reasons was because my dad was like, you've got to go to law school so this doesn't happen to you, and you can make sure that people don't get taken advantage of in the same way, and you can help and do work that's important. And so that was my drive initially, was like, okay, I'm going to do this. This is the path that I'm going to go go on and pursued that career. Thankfully, I got a job at, the big law firm. I was making really good money. And the thing about that was I just wasn't feeling fulfilled with the work. I felt like there was something else that I was being called to do, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. And there were times where I thought, you know what? I don't know, like, should I even be a lawyer or should I go down a different career path? And thankfully, I stayed with it, and I was in private practice with 2 national firms for about 10 years total. Then I went in-house, and I was the general counsel for a financial services company. And I knew that the plan for the company was to basically get everything in order so that they could sell the business. So we're trying to maximize the value there. And they had said, when we sell, most likely, you won't have a job because they're going to come in, they're going to put in their own executive team and that sort of thing. So I knew that it was coming, but it happened probably 6 or 7 months before I was anticipating that.
So you were like structuring your own demise.
Right. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
a really, was there any time where you're like, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. I'm going to go get another job.
I think I thought about what direction I was going to go at the point of knowing that was kind of a short-term position for me. And my husband, though, had said, all right, well, this is the opportunity now for your next step to be starting your own firm. And that was scary to me because I saw, as I mentioned, my dad and, the hardships of, having your own business and just the uncertainty. And of course, we had 5 children at the time. And it was like, okay, but we rely on this paycheck. What if it doesn't work out? So I think the fear had kept me from taking that leap. But when I was actually laid off, 6 months before we anticipated it happening, we had a decision to make, like, okay, well, do I go and get another job or do we just go and start this firm? And I remember coming home that day and talking to my husband, and I was like looking through LinkedIn, and seeing like, okay, should I post, should I start looking for positions? And I thought, you know what? No, I think this is the time that we just go all in, and we did it. I had 0 clients. It wasn't even like I was coming from a law firm, right?
That's what's tough about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I didn't have a book of business because I was coming from in-house, but thankfully, whatever it was, some guiding force, faith, luck, just opportunity, we made it happen and started off doing estate planning, business, personal injury, which are all 3 of our core services that we continue to offer. And the position that I had in my previous job, I was the general counsel. They actually hired me, the new company hired me as their outside counsel.
Very nice.
So that was one of my first, large business clients. So that helped with that transition, definitely. And then they tried to rehire me as their full-time in-house counsel.
And you're
I was
like,
yeah,
no way, not doing that again.
Yeah. I was like, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, do you think if they hadn't abruptly closed the business that you would have actually pulled the trigger and started your firm?
I don't think I would have done it at that time. I think I would have continued to drag my feet. I was scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was scared. And without, my husband kind of pushing and supporting and saying like, look, like this is your opportunity, let's take it now. I don't think I would have done it on my own or otherwise. I think I needed that extra.
It's nice having that champion.
Yeah.
It's because, so you work with your spouse, right?
I do.
And I work with my spouse. And so it is nice having that person that is always in your corner.
Right.
Yeah,
that you can trust, that has your best interests at heart. So it's definitely a blessing.
I wonder if you all bring work home, because clearly your father's work affected your childhood.
Yeah.
It was a big issue.
Yeah.
Not an issue. It was a big impact. And do you have any safeguards in place because of that, or how has that affected your parenting style?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, or the biggest impact, was I had this scarcity mindset growing up, because I was like, oh gosh, I saw it happening at being the oldest. My younger brother and sister didn't really see what I saw. And, my dad would have conversations with me like, look, this is why these things happen. These are the consequences, So as a young person, I was getting exposed to a lot of things that most of my peers, weren't, conversations like real life things and business exposure. And so as I got older and I had my own family and had my own responsibilities, I still had that fear, the fear of failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also that scarcity mindset, like, well, what if this doesn't work out? And what if I take this risk? And what if I fail? And I've had to really shift that and be open to opportunities and trying new things and going outside of my comfort zone and being okay with failing in certain things, because without that risk, you don't get the big reward. And what I've seen is when I take those risks and when I go out there and I don't have that fear driving me, then I have the success and it just kind of comes, it flows more naturally.
How long did it take from the time you started the firm to like actually you starting to see success and starting to see the fruits of taking those risks? Like how long did it take for you to kind of get past that? Because scarcity mindset is a very dangerous mindset to have.
Yes.
It can put a stranglehold on firms. Mm-hmm. You're operating out of fear. So you're operating out of fear, you're in a really bad spot. So at what point did you start to see things take off to get past that hump?
Thankfully, incrementally, especially at the beginning, I was seeing doors opening and I was opening doors myself. So I think I didn't have a choice. I knew that like I had to make this work and we had to make it work, or our family, was at risk. And so I just really organically, I relied on the relationships that I had. And so because I've grown up here, I have a lot of friends. I went to law school here. So kind of tapping into those different networks that I already had established and like letting them know like, hey, I started my firm. This is the work that I do. Like how can I be of support to you? How can we work together? So going out and meeting with people one-on-one, having coffee, being really active and engaging on social media. That was huge. I tell people all the time, like, do not underestimate the value of social media, because that's how people know who you are. And you may not get a ton of business. Like you might talk about something and you might offer a service and you might not get a direct response to that, that particular post or that particular offer, but it will come, when people understand what you do and how you can serve them. So that's why I stay active on social media. But I think it was just taking those steps, and continuing to like work and build upon each level. So starting with, those first few clients that hired me, and then I continued to just build from there, and it worked.
Yeah. So I went through your social media, and I was kind of curious to see like the things you post about and all that. Mm-hmm. So it's very community minded, but I also noticed that it's very fitness minded. Mm-hmm. And I wonder where that part comes from.
Yeah. So that part started during the pandemic, when I've always been very active. I played sports growing up. I played basketball. I ran track. My husband and I actually met at a track meet.
Oh, that's interesting.
When we were 16 and 17. So we've been together since high school.
So I was interested. I saw that you two are high school sweethearts. Mm-hmm. My wife and I are high school sweethearts.
Are you?
So I get how that goes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, sports has always been something that I've kept kind of in my, even when I wasn't competing, I continued to stay active and work out. So at the time of the pandemic, I was at that time I was going to the gym regularly. I was doing like hot yoga, Pilates, lifting, things like that. And when we had the shutdown, I was like, okay, well, the first week or two, I think I was just kind of like waiting to be able to go back to the gym, because we thought that that's what was going to happen. And then when I realized like, oh, shoot, okay, like this is not happening. Yeah. Then I was like, all right, well, let me start doing, stuff at home to just kind of maintain and stay active. And so I picked up the jump rope. And I hadn't really jump roped since, or been active with it since I was in elementary school. So in third grade, for one season, I was on the school's jump roping team.
There's a jump roping? I've never even heard of that.
This is in Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All
so
right.
I don't think they have them anymore, but at the time we did, at least for that year. And so I did that for a season basically, and had gotten pretty good, but I was in third grade. I was still young.
Yeah.
So I during the pandemic basically was like, all right, well, let me just do this. This is good cardio. I don't have to like go anywhere. I only need a jump rope. It doesn't require equipment. So I started doing that, and then just doing like at home workouts,
Yeah.
that didn't really require that much. And I would connect with people on social media. So I'd like do live, social media, broadcasts while I was working out. And I was having my kids involved too, because they were at home. And that just allowed me that opportunity to connect. And people would comment and tell me like, oh my gosh, well, that's such a great idea. I'm going to do that with my kids too. Or, you know what, I'm going to start working out. And so it just became this thing where, as a lawyer that practices in estate planning, which is focused on, family, wealth, legacy, your health is part of that too, right? And so it was just an easy thing to be able to incorporate into what I do, but something that I do on the personal side that just kind of connects there.
Working out is such an important, like for me, so I had a shoulder surgery a couple weeks ago. And so I've not been able to go to the gym for a couple weeks, and it's like driving me nuts.
Yeah.
But it's a good demonstration of like how it affects your work. You know what I mean? Like, because you're like, I get anxious, and like, I guess what would your message be to people that are maybe just getting out of law school, and maybe, because I don't know about you, but when I was in law school, I actually kind of let some of my health kind of go a little bit. I was focusing too much on studying.
Right.
And, I wasn't sleeping well. So I guess what would your advice be to some of those new, lawyers and law students that are about to graduate?
Yeah.
That would about focusing on your health.
Well, I would encourage even law students that are currently in law school to stay active, or do something. And it doesn't have to be a 2-hour gym workout, right? It can be a 30-minute walk. It can be, 20 minutes of, on the bike, 10 minutes of jump, whatever it is that you can do, just like do something and be consistent with it. That's what I found is key, because it's easy to fall off.
Totally.
For people that even have it as part of their routine, when something happens, a surgery, vacation, whatever it is, and they get out of that routine, it can be really difficult to get back on track. And so even when I have a lot of things happening, even if it's just a few minutes, I try to do something just to keep me in that flow, because as you were saying also, it has so many other benefits to not just physical, but your mental. And when you're stressed out about school or your work, it's just another outlet to be able to kind of clear some space and, get the juices flowing, the endorphins and, all that good stuff. So my recommendation would be to do something, even if you're not an athlete, if you don't really have like a workout, history or background, just doing something to be active will have so many benefits long-term too.
And I think most people think of it as like a cost, where like you're going to be less productive, but there's several studies on this that your actual productivity increases like a substantial percentage. It's like several times over. So by you actually not working out, you decrease your productivity. Right. So the time that you don't take, you're actually losing so much time, which is, I find that part really interesting, because the thought is, if I go to the gym, I'm going to have to spend an hour there, I'm going to take a shower, all that. Yeah, but the net positive is you're healthier, you're going to live longer, you're going to look better, and guess what? You're going to get more work done.
Right, and you'll be more focused. That's what I found. And I like to work out in the morning just because it's something that kind of jumpstart my day, and it's an easy win. Yeah. When you get up and that's how you start your day, it's easy to be more productive throughout the day because you've already done something that starts, that momentum.
So I hate working out in the morning, but I still do it. I don't like doing it, but I do it because I know if I don't do it, I won't do it.
Right.
It's one of those things where I will. Yeah. I have to go in the morning, and if I don't, then I'm done.
That happens with me too, because I actually prefer to work out in the evening. But I know that if I've had a long day or whatever happens, something happens. Yeah, it's easy to just not do it. Yeah. So the consistency is key there.
So I want to shift gears back over to the firm, and you you said something about the practice areas, and what's interesting, I went through your Google reviews, and because something that's really challenging is like whenever someone has multiple practice areas, because it's really hard to market for it, it's hard to have the systems for it. So I want to ask you, do you think that the strategy you've had when it comes to the 3 practice areas, because what surprised me was the car crashes, because there was a review that specifically said that you had represented them for like 4 years, and like it mentioned like 3 different things. I was like, well, that's odd, so do you, I wonder if you think that has been an effective strategy, or if you had focused on one of those areas of the 3, that you'd be better off.
That's a great question. I think we actually have really focused on one area in particular as far as the marketing aspect, which is estate planning. So that's what most people know us for, is the estate planning side. And that's what we've really put most of our effort and time and resources behind promoting.
Yeah.
The other kind of ancillary practice areas, business and personal injury, are really there kind of in the background, but we get a lot of business just from, referrals, people that, know us in the community, and just the relationships that we have with clients, because on the estate planning side, we have the opportunity to really talk about all of the things that are happening in their lives, and we have an ongoing relationship. So when things happen, and I tell clients all the time, if anything happens, and you need, advice, legal counsel, even if it's not legal related, call, because I'm happy to, point you in the right direction, give you a referral, even if it's outside of.
You want to be the controller of the lead.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And that's so powerful. I don't think enough of us do that, because we're so focused on, running our firms and whatever particular practice area. But there's so much opportunity when people are coming to you, because, for example, I don't do family law like divorce and custody, but we get a lot of those inquiries, and I have people in our network, really good firms, good friends that are also clients, that I say, you know what, this is not something that we do, but I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to connect you with someone that will take care of you.
And you know that they will.
And I know, I have the confidence. So I'm very careful, though, about who I refer clients to, right? Because it's a reflection on us. And if the clients have a bad, experience, and they're going to come back to me and be like, Shane, why did you send me to that person?
We'll give one, if you screw up one time, you're off the list.
Yeah.
Unless it's something completely outrageous. It's like the client's being outrageous, but otherwise you're gone.
Right.
You have to be very, very careful, because it's your reputation. It's not their reputation. It's your reputation.
It really is.
And you're so dependent on the referrals and everything else. It's really important. But with that, so it's what you said about the estate planning, like everything I saw from a social media standpoint, estate planning, website, estate planning for the most part. But that was what was so almost startling to me. It was like I was going through the Google reviews, and I don't even know why. I don't normally go through the Google reviews, but I was
like that you did that.
I'm going to go through the Google reviews.
That's good research.
Yeah, and I was like, and then I was like, car crashes.
Yeah,
that's odd. And so I wonder if I've got that impression. What do you think other potential clients? Let's say it's not a referral.
Right.
Let's say it's like an actual someone that's finding you on the internet. I just wonder what you think that they think.
By seeing a review related to
it has like all these
injury.
Other practice areas.
Yeah. I think that a lot of it has to do with what people hear, in the community. And so our reputation really is what people are really making their decisions on. And because we have so much out there, like there's so much social media, there's so many opportunities for them to go and see, and check out, who we are, who I am.
You're all over. Yes.
Yeah. And I have, videos on our website, and on-demand video that goes into like estate planning 101. So I try to make it like accessible so they can kind of do their, their own assessment of what they, believe as far as whether it's a good fit or not. But I've
got a funny one because I noticed there's a billboard right outside this studio.
Yes.
And so you are, is it 26 or 29 years in a row that you got Best of Las Vegas?
Oh, so it's 29 times. So
29 times.
Yeah,
okay.
29 times we've been voted Best of Las Vegas. So we get voted Best of Las Vegas, or we have been voted Best of Las Vegas in multiple categories. So we've got for example, like best estate planning law firm. We had best personal injury firm.
No way.
Customer
That's funny. Okay.
service. Yeah. Asset protection, kids protection, best woman-owned business. So there's several categories that we've
cool.
won. Yeah.
It's 20 what? 29?
29.
Excellent.
And then for 2024, they're going to be announcing the winners in December, so we'll be able to add to that.
So here's
list.
the question. It's kind of funny, but did you see the billboard?
Yes.
What are your thoughts when you saw that? Because okay, so here's where this is coming from, just for me. Yeah. So we had in one of our cities, we had won Best of Columbia 2 years in a row for injury, and then this year it drove me so crazy that we got second this year.
Yeah.
So crazy. So I wonder, when you saw that, does it bother you at all?
It doesn't bother me because, for me, I think that there's enough for all of us, right? There's so much opportunity. The thing that bothers me, I'll be honest with you, is sometimes people will just they'll try to copy what we do.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of imitation out there, but I also take it, the saying, what is it? Imitation is
that's
flattery.
Flattery. Yeah.
So I try to take it as a compliment, that people are looking at what we're doing and, they're liking, they're seeing that it works and, they're trying to make it work. But my husband, a lot of times, he's just like, Shane, it's a copy of a copy. It's not the original. So, it's in some ways it can be considered competing, but at the same time, it is what it is, and it's just part of the business.
We had a law firm; they were copying our exact social media posts. They were taking the post
word for word.
And I don't know if they were. I can't remember if they actually just removed our logo and put their logo, or if it. But it was identical.
Oh no!
They just changed the logo.
Oh,
it was like
that's bad.
That was infuriating. That drove me nuts.
Right.
That was crazy. So I get that too. Yeah. So when did your husband? What's his name?
Charles.
Charles. When did Charles join the firm?
He joined from the beginning.
From the beginning?
Yeah, from the beginning. I mean, he's definitely become a lot more involved in the last, several years. At the beginning, when I was trying to, just figure out really what we were going to do on the setup side of it, that was, more so me trying to figure things out. But he's always been part of it, even from the first website that we put together, he was the one that, managed that. So on the marketing side, he's always been that key person. And then he has, over the past several years, moved into more on the operational side of the firm.
Like a COO almost?
Exactly,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Is that his title? Or does he have a title? Yeah, okay.
It's COO and then really CEO also, but with respect to just running the business side of it, I'm the CEO on the legal part of it, of course, as the lawyer. But yeah, we have a good partnership there, and we've got a really good executive team. We have good relationships with Regulus Media is another business that we work with that does a lot of our marketing, media, has set up a lot of our operational systems. So,
nice. Yeah. So the makeup of the firm, who do you have in your firm? Like what's it made up of?
Sure. So Charles and I as the owners, and of course I'm an attorney. He's the COO, CEO. We also have another full-time attorney in the office, also a Boyd graduate.
Oh, very nice.
From the law school here. And then we have right now 1, 2. We've got another 7 or so staff members, so paralegals, and then 3 law clerks. 2 of them are my daughters who are now in law school.
Yeah.
So the twins that I mentioned, they're in their second year of law school, and they work with the firm part-time, and during the summers they're full-time. And then we have another law clerk that works part-time with us.
So I'm curious, how were you able to afford it? Because that's a really daring thing. Yeah. You don't have a job to start the firm. Yeah. He doesn't have a job to start the firm. So how are you able to afford life at that point?
We really had to dip into our savings, our retirement, any resources that we had to be able to build the firm. And that was also scary, because it's like, okay, well, we have no guarantees, on the other side of these investments that we're making. But I think when we just failure was just not an option, like an overall failure. We've had lots of small failures.
It's part of
as
running
expected,
a firm.
right?
Yeah.
But I think we were very intentional and strategic in the decisions that we were making and how we were going to spend our time, what we were going to be focusing on, how we were going to serve clients, the investments that we were making into our business. And it's a lot different, working with your spouse, on a business level versus, being married, husband and wife. There are a lot of different dynamics.
Talk about some of those challenges.
Yeah. It has been challenging in that, I've been a lawyer for so long, and this was my first business that I started. But my husband has had several other small businesses. So, he was coming from a different perspective, and because it was, like a law firm, and of course it ends up falling, on me and my license and, all of these things, ultimately, to me, it was hard for me at first to let go of some of the control as far as how things were going to be done, what decisions were going to be made with the firm. But as we continued to grow and of course I couldn't do everything on my own, and I had to make sure that we had the right people doing the right things. Thankfully, because I trust him and I was able to see a different side of him on the professional side that we never really had the benefit of seeing before because we never really worked together.
Sure.
We always kind of did our separate things. So that has been such a great opportunity and a blessing because I would have never been able to have that appreciation for him had it not been for the firm.
Was there any hesitation at the beginning to bring him on?
I don't know that there was any hesitation. I think that I just didn't know what it was going to look like. And I thought he might just be more kind of in the background and not really involved in the overall running of the firm. I thought I was probably going to be responsible for that, and he might have, different parts or pieces to it. But thankfully, he's stepped in and taken so much off of my plate, and not necessarily work, because I'm always going to have the legal work and that side of it, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of just the pressure and the stress of, putting certain things in place, whether it's marketing or whether it's a system or a process or procedure within the firm, hiring, that's one of the biggest things is.
It's one of the hardest parts.
Yes, managing the people. So it doesn't all fall on my shoulders. And I have a lot of my friends, colleagues, peers, where they have their own firms and they don't really have that support. And I can't imagine.
There's no employee that works at your firm that is nearly as loyal and someone you can trust as much as your husband.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we have that same thing. I think my biggest fear it wasn't a hesitation, it was a fear about it affecting the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any of those concerns?
I think, I don't know that I had concerns about that, early on, but I did know that if we didn't learn how to properly communicate or work on our communication on the business side, because a lot of it blurs together.
It does.
And you asked, or you started asking, I think a little bit earlier about, do I do things differently than my dad? Because I grew up seeing him, and we don't really have any separation as far as work and our home life, because we go to the office and we're there and we're working, of course, and sometimes family things come up and we have those conversations while we're there because, we have the proximity. And then when we're at home, and I also do work from home sometimes too. So when we're at home, something comes up, even if it's on the weekend, even if it's, after working hours, it's a conversation that we have, or, it's something that we might, sit down and, map out or work on, even if it's not something that's planned. For some people, I think that would be hard because there's no separation, there's no on and off. Yeah. But for us, it just works. We have a good flow to it, and we call it, or he says, we're taking advantage of the advantage. Because when other people are, asleep or they're doing other things, we are able to have the conversations that we don't have to wait for tomorrow.
Yeah, I like that. Taking advantage of the advantage. That's good, because it does. It's impossible for it to not blend in with each other. There is, we did have to set some boundaries, and a lot of it does come down to communication and how you communicate. So I like the way you put that.
Yeah,
that was really good. What about your kids? Are any of your kids still at home?
All of them.
So all of them are still, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you prevent it from bleeding into those relationships?
Right. Part of it because our oldest are also part of our firm. They work at the firm. They're kind of sucked into the conversations sometimes.
Sure.
And, we might be having dinner and we'll be talking about something work related. But I think it's just because we're so passionate about our business and about the work that we do and ultimately our family. And our family, our kids understand that the life that they get to live is because of the work that we do. And so sometimes, we might have to focus or dedicate time, to work. And our daughters are old enough now to where they understand. And, but they'll have their time where they're like, okay, so when do we get to do this? Or when do we get to spend time doing, whatever? So Charles and I have made more efforts towards carving out that time for family and doing things, one-on-one with our girls. We've been doing more family vacations. So we try to do like once a year, we do a family vacation.
Very nice.
Charles and I actually just came back from Mexico. We were in Puerto Vallarta. And so we were there for a week. And we did have the opportunity to talk about some, work things and strategy. But then we also had that downtime where it's just kind of balancing it and finding the right moments and the right time to do what we need to do.
Do you all ever set aside like weekly time for each other, like date nights or anything like that?
We do. We don't have necessarily like a specific day or like a structured, time for that. But we are pretty good about, saying like, hey, like even Thursday night. Or Thursday during the day, I was like, hey, I texted him, like, do you want to go on a date tonight? And he was like,
nice.
Yeah, sure. And so our dates usually consist of going out to eat.
Listen, that is,
we like to
ours
eat.
are too. Yeah, exactly. We do too. Yeah.
But yeah, like those moments or even, something happens in our schedule, we'll be like, hey, do you have plans for lunch? Like, let's go grab something. So just finding those little pockets of time to spend together.
We call them day dates. Those day dates are nice.
Right?
Yes, like those little dates like in the middle of the day are really cool.
Right.
Yeah, those are like really nice moments because because that's part of blending together. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of hard to have them completely separate. I think it's unrealistic to say they're separate.
I agree.
Now, okay, so whenever I picture you, online, in person, you've got a lot of energy. You present really well. Online, same thing. But as you know, it's not all that.
Yeah.
It's not like that all the time. There are some darker moments that we were mentioning, like things happen where like you'll fail. Like there's on small things, you'll fail. You have to get back up, dust yourself off and keep going. And the reason why I ask these, it's because I think it does help other law firm owners like, okay, what are some mistakes that other people have made and how can I make sure that I don't make those mistakes? So can you think of anything where like some of those darker moments that you're like, oh gosh, this sucks? Like what were some of those?
Yeah, I would say some of the hard points for me were one, we talked about having the right people, right?
Yeah.
And so even though I've had the support, my husband and I are there to support each other. When we've hired certain people that didn't work out and that I really had other hopes for, there was one in particular where we made a lot of investments, into this person, and they were with the firm for several years, but they just weren't in a position to be able to grow. They wanted to kind of stay small.
Yeah.
And so it just wasn't a good fit. And because I'm a very loyal person, even when I knew it wasn't working, I didn't want to see it. And I didn't want to see, because it ended up becoming a not very good situation where that person it kind of shifted.
Yeah.
And I think I waited too long to make the break. And because I was just like, I don't want to do that. I want to see like how we can make it work. And so that, I would say that was really tough for me, because when I build those relationships and I care about people, I cared about that person, not just as a professional, but, like as, a close friend. And that's tough for me to separate. So I would say that those kinds of examples are really
Yeah,
difficult.
those ones are tough, especially because usually the red flag is like, I like the way things used to be.
Yeah.
I don't like I don't like it this way. That's usually was it kind of that sort
It
of
was
a thing?
like that. Yeah.
And
And
it's
as
strangling your growth.
Exactly. And as we were continuing to grow and, we were getting more clients. And so being able to scale, we had to put new systems in place and new processes. And so it wasn't just like this mom and pop shop anymore.
Exactly.
We weren't just writing on a notebook or like putting things into a spreadsheet. Like we need actual systems, and accountability was a really big thing. And it's really easy to hide in certain structures.
So we implemented top grading. It's probably 2 years ago now, maybe 18 months. But I don't know if have you ever read that book, Top Grading?
No.
It's if you ever want to like redo your hiring and so it's like we have an on point hiring process. It's good, and we had already had a process, but this put it over the top. It's fantastic. But
I need to read it.
It's interesting. We started to do this, and whenever I told them, I said, listen, some of you are not going to like this. And some of you may want to leave, and that's completely fine. I was just very open about it. And it was interesting, the accountability component of it, where people, you figured out who was the right fit for the firm and who wasn't.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. Like what were you basing your changes on? Because we went off top grading, and so I wonder what changes you made and like kind of what were you basing it on?
So it was based on what our goals were, and it was funny because that person in particular, it was one of the first hires that we had made,
tough.
right? And so they'd been with us the longest, had been kind of in the trenches with like, okay, well, how do we structure these things, and had been really involved. And I think part of the reason why it was difficult was this person really felt like, they had like this ownership stake in it, even though, they weren't.
Let me guess. I'm gonna guess some traits. So he or she said, was it a she?
Yeah.
She told you how valuable she was to the firm and how she was part of building the firm to where it was, that she works really hard. She works harder than everyone else. No one else is following the rules, but she probably wasn't following the rules herself.
Right.
Is this all making sense?
Yeah, pretty much. And one of the things was, it was like she wanted to control, everything. And so she would overwhelm herself with work and say like, yeah, Shane, I'm taking care of it. And I trusted that she
But I don't have time.
Right.
Yes.
Or like, okay, I'm taking care of it. And, I take people at their word until you can't. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was like, she didn't want to delegate, even though we had other people to do other things, like she didn't want to delegate things. And then we realized, okay, well, certain things weren't being done and things slipped through the cracks. And so, I learned some hard lessons on just, I just can't like trust but verify is what an old boss had told me. He was like, okay, you don't want to come off as someone that's, necessarily like micromanaging or that you don't have confidence in, the people that you've hired. But you always need to verify. And, there always needs to be that accountability piece. And I think accountability is huge. It's so huge.
I wouldn't say it's everything, but it's almost everything.
Yeah.
It's a big part of it.
And a lot of people have trouble with it.
Yeah. You have to be able to take ownership over it and fess up whenever you're not getting things done. And you got to do the work, but it's, that's something we noticed is like the ones that were the right culture fit were the ones that they weren't the ones saying, give me another thing and not doing it. It's like they would instead say, listen, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't have enough time in my day, and here's why. Like, and so the big tell for us was like, if you're like hoarding information as opposed to just like being open, like, listen, here's why I can't do these things. And like, instead of saying I can do this and like hoarding the information, like that's where like, and a lot of it does come down to accountability because they want to show that they are doing all these things and they're telling you they're doing all these things and really they're not.
Right.
And they don't want to be held accountable for it.
But they want the pats on the back.
Exactly.
And they want
the
praise. But those are difficult situations.
They are.
But I think it just also goes back to, and what we've learned through the course of the last several years is it's worth it to take your time to hire the right people. And when you hire someone and you realize that it's not a good fit, it's better to just have that break.
Yeah.
And, had people in positions longer than we should have just because we're trying to exhaust every opportunity. Like, okay, well, maybe they just need training. Maybe they just need them. Okay, well, let's give them some more support. But now we've gotten to the point where it's very clear and we know, early on. And thankfully, we've been able to come up with a much better hiring process, vetting, incorporating different types of assessments.
Yeah, what do you do? I was curious because we implement assessments, like we do personality tests and all that kind of stuff. We use Colby for like assessments for like when it comes to scores and all that. Like, what are some things you do?
We use similar types of personality tests. There are certain assessments that are built into some of the hiring platforms that we've used, and then we just actually launched one, and I am forgetting the name of it. Monkey something. Does that sound familiar?
Is it? It's for assessments?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, now I'm gonna. I started going through it.
And are these like quizzes? Is that kind of like Survey Monkey, or using like some like
it's
Survey
not
Monkey?
A survey,
okay,
but it's an actual assessment. Oh my
Interesting.
gosh, I'll have to get it to you later. But yeah, we basically were able to build the assessment specific to a particular position that we wanted. And so it's like a timed assessment, and you can have them come into the office to do it, or you can send them a link to do it, and they have to have like their camera on.
Yeah, so we don't. I like that element. So we do the surveys and all that. We like ours is like all this is automated, but the camera element I like and that's done through that monkey.
And I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's going to drive me insane if
because we do have them in their other room. So if they find it, maybe they can bring it in and tell us what it is.
Yeah.
We don't have the ability on the screen to put it up. Otherwise, that we could do that. But yeah.
But you can basically build your own assessment through this tool, and different things for different positions. But like one part of it is like a time management. A set of questions, and it's like problem solving, basically to see like how people work through different scenarios. So it'll give you, like this fact pattern, and then multiple choice, options for how to deal with that particular type of situation. So you get into kind of how their mind works, the mindset, to be able to see, okay, well, is this someone that would be aligned with how we do things at Young Law Group?
Do you ask for references?
I do.
Yeah, references is so crucial.
I do.
Because it's funny, even if they compliment a candidate, you can tell when it's not genuine.
Right.
So there's like the way the compliment is given, like the way they like to say because like a genuine compliment is that, listen, Shane, you can tell she always comes to work on time. Whenever she comes in here, she does this. They're very specific about the things that Shane does, right?
Yes.
As opposed to like, you know what? Shane's great. We would hire her again.
Right.
Like one of those things. Like, okay. Yeah,
Yes.
that's not a genuine.
Not really helpful.
No, not really at all. But yeah, so and that's where like, so Kristen, she's our office administrator. She'll call, and we have these lists of questions we'll ask, and we get, okay, what's the best way of managing this person? All that, which is really, really helpful. Like, what are some things that you've seen in Shane where she doesn't take feedback very well? Like, so you ask these questions where it helps us that even if we see some red flags and like they're small, it helps us manage the employee better too, which is those checks, those reference checks are so key.
Yeah. And you go into this engagement already with information, so that how to kind of guide that employee.
That's crucial. Yeah. Do you do anything like, so like we do the Colby personality test. Do you do anything like DISC or Colby like that to help you manage people like with the scores?
At my prior job where I was the general counsel, we did DISC, but now I think DISC is outdated. Yeah. Really.
It's funny. We had someone on earlier that he loves DISC. So it is interesting the people that like DISC.
Right.
But yeah, I can't reference if it's outdated or not. But yeah, so I don't think it's as popular as what it used to be. Yeah.
But now there are a lot of different things. So we do a combination of things. So like, and I like to see kind of the different results based on the different tests. But like Colby's one, a DISC, of course. There's oh my gosh. It'll come back to me. But another one is human design.
Oh, I've not heard of that one.
Okay. So human design is interesting because it's based off of your birth date and birthplace. So it's really like how you are
Oh,
designed.
no, I'm interested.
Yes.
Now. This is fascinating.
And if you go to the website is, I think, Jovian Archive, and I can send it to you later.
Okay.
At the bottom, if you scroll down, and if you Google like human design, Jovian human design, scroll down to the bottom, you can take your own test, your own assessment, but you just need to know your date of birth, the time of your birth, and your location.
The time of your birth?
So it's like the cousin of astrology is how they describe it.
That's what it sounds like, yes.
Yeah. But it's very interesting. So I've done it, my husband's done it, and then we also had basically like a coach kind of do an assessment of the two of us. So we were able to do that. And I think there's different categories of people that like projectors, generators, manifestors, and they're like different subsets. It's very interesting.
Do you
You'll
find
like
it to be accurate?
I do.
Yeah?
I do. But I think there's no like one size fits all type of thing. So I think just like utilizing these different ways of assessing personality and performance, and like your human design, I think it kind of goes into being able to get a fuller picture.
Yeah. So we had Dr. Melvin King on. He was the one talking about DISC, and he's here in Vegas with you as well. And but he was talking about how like people think that your score is your score, and it's not true. Like it's really situational, where like your score might change. Like so, if you're at home, your DISC score might be one thing, but if you're at work, it might be a different thing. So that's an interesting part of it too, where even though, even if it's what'd you call it? What was it?
Human design.
Human design. Even if that is accurate in some situations, it may not be accurate in others.
Right.
Yeah. Which is also an interesting part of it as well.
And it also goes into like decision making.
Yes.
It'll tell you like my natural disposition is to hold off on making decisions and like trying to be very deliberate and taking time to process. But most times if I just like made the decision based on my instinct, that's the best decision.
And there's actually a lot of studies on that where the best decision makers are actually the ones that make the ones right away. And it's actually not that you've made the right decision.
Right.
It's that you've made a decision which like the delay is what causes the harm.
Yeah.
Which I think that's an interesting part of it. Yeah. So you mentioned coaching. What role has that played in your ability to scale?
We've utilized different resources throughout our journey in having the law firm, and being part of different groups, different organizations, even things like the, chambers.
Sure.
Those are really good. Entrepreneurs organization, EO is another. I think really just relying on the experiences and what people share with you, from business owners. So when I started my firm, I already had some friends that had their own law firms. And so I was just like, hey, I need your help, like what do you recommend for this and that, and, different questions. And we continue to do that and help and support each other. So even if it doesn't necessarily, I would say, have to be like a formal like coaching experience, but when you do have, the opportunity to really like tap into, like a platform or a coaching program like what you provide, I highly recommend it, because you'll save so much time and heartache and resources when you just make some of those investments. And so I think that that's something that I probably would have done earlier in my law firm journey.
Why do you think you hesitated?
I think because I didn't really know at first the direction that I wanted to go. And, we were part of things like, new law, business model. And so that was like, that was helpful, like for, that stage of our growth. And, from there we've been able to just research and build, and I think just being innovative is important, being open,
not getting stuck in your ways is really important.
That is so important, especially as we've seen in the past few years, so much changes, with the pandemic, things have changed a lot as far as the dynamics of how services are provided. and how people decide to hire, so.
So there's a couple things that you've said over the last 30 minutes where you mentioned the goals that you all have when you're talking about hiring, and then you had just mentioned though is about you just didn't know about. I don't know how you put it. Basically, it sounds like you didn't know where you're headed, right? So it sounds like though you might now have a vision in mind,
yeah.
and so I wonder what was your original thought as to where you thought you might be at this point, right? And like now, what's your vision for what the firm is?
It's interesting because I think about that sometimes, like when I first started the firm, like where did I see it going or what was my goal? And I don't even know that I knew that at that time. It was just, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we'll see how it goes. I think that vision came more so from my husband, where he was the one, kind of behind the scenes and just like pushing me along. And I was just like, all right, okay, yeah, no, all right, yeah, I'm on board with that. Now I think I see it a lot more clearly. I've had the time to, take it in and understand. And of course, we've had so many conversations, so much time that we've spent really like charting this course and talking about what we want to be able to do moving forward. And, part of that includes having, this other set of lawyers that are coming in, to the firm, the existing, lawyer and lawyers of counsel, our daughters, being able to step into these roles.
Another massive advantage, that you'll have. Yes.
Right. So that frees me up to be able to go and do these other things. And, other things that I'm interested in doing is, of course, more speaking. I do a lot of speaking engagements now, but, really like going into doing more of that and stepping outside of doing not as much on the lawyering side.
So are you hoping to maybe one day turn the firm over to the girls?
Yeah.
How cool would that
be? Yeah. I think we'll still be involved. I'll always be involved until maybe I retire at some point. And even if I, kind of retire, I would still be, wanting to be involved. But I know with time and experience, they'll be able to step in, and the leadership team that we have in place that we've continued to, cultivate with, training and coaching and we have it set up to be able to step out, and step aside.
So you've mentioned your leadership team a couple times. What effect has that had on the growth of the business?
It's huge because when you have good people in place, it allows me as a business owner to not worry about the things that I would worry about otherwise, and not have to be doing all of the things, and be involved in everything and all of the decisions. So it's important, I think, that you make those hiring decisions carefully. And what I've done, with our team, including, our senior paralegal is our office manager. And so she's an amazing paralegal, and, she's in this leadership role now where it's a different skill set.
That's completely different skill set. I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
So because that is a, sometimes it's a mistake, sometimes it's a brilliant idea where like they will promote a person, someone will promote a person to a position just because they feel like they've earned it, but they really are not qualified for it. So how have you adjusted to make sure that she's equipped to be in that role?
Yeah, really just providing her with the support and the authority to know that you don't have to do everything. Yeah. And we don't want you to do everything. We want you to know how to do these things, yes, and to be involved, but in order to inspect for what we expect, right? So that other people can be doing this work and you're managing it.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard. It can be a hard shift. It's the same shift that I had to make where I wasn't the one that was doing everything. It's hard to let go of some of that. It's hard to delegate. It's hard to trust and have confidence sometimes. And so giving, reminding her and giving her that, that support, that coaching is important, and also hiring the right people to be on the team that she can have confidence in. It's that cycle, it has a major effect on our ability to grow, because when we didn't have the right people in place, we had to kind of refocus our attention and our time.
Very distracting when you have the
Yes.
wrong people. What do you think has been maybe the most difficult thing to let go?
The most difficult thing to let go in having my firm?
Yeah.
Well, I think when we first started, the most difficult thing for me was just the stability, of
Yeah.
like having that, like the prior position, prior title. I had this identity,
The prestige part of it. Yes. Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Like being at the big firm, making really good money and really having to kind of take a step back and just like build. That was probably the hardest thing, but also it's provided the greatest benefit because we've been able to grow so much and create so much more.
Do you think your colleagues out here thought you were crazy?
I think they were probably, I don't know that they would think I was crazy because I had been an attorney for a while.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was that surprising. But I've had a lot of my colleagues, my friends that have in similar situations gone from, that stability, good firms, good positions to starting their own firms, and they've struggled.
Yeah.
And then some of them have had to go back, into working with a firm because things didn't work out. So I think it all just goes back to making the right investments, having the right mindset, spending your resources, your time, your money in the right ways.
Yeah.
And you're not always going to make the right decisions. And that's something that I've had to also learn to be better about, is to not dwell on the things that don't work out.
Yeah.
Because I tend to take the negative things, or the failures or the disappointments a lot harder. Like my lows are a lot lower than they're not equal to the highs.
Yeah.
you know?
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just part of like who I am as a person. And I think a lot of us have that same quality where we will just be really hard on ourselves when it
Sure.
doesn't happen the way that we, want it to, or if we, fail at something or we don't perform the way that we have the expectation. A lot of it's that self-imposed pressure.
Yeah.
And we don't really take the time to celebrate, the big things as they should be celebrated, equally. So I go back to when we talk about coaching, in playing sports, one of the things that we've taught, our girls and our young athletes is, next play. Like, okay, you make a mistake, it's all right. You got to learn from it and
Yeah.
refocus and focus on what's next. So, that's
Do you know
what I
Jason
remind myself.
Selk?
What's the name?
His name's Jason Selk. He's a sports psychologist.
No.
So he is. I love that you said next play.
Yeah.
So he's actually my coach. He was the sports psychologist for the Cardinals when they won the last 2 World Series. He's the sports psychologist for SMU football now. I think he's really good. But he talks a lot about using the analogy of the baseball player that it's his contract year and he's at the plate. And it's a full count. Do you know anything about baseball?
A little
okay,
bit. Basketball's more my sport.
Okay.
But.
Okay. So I'll continue down this route,
Yeah.
but it's his analogy, so I'll continue with it. But so he takes third strike, which is a no-no, right? So he strikes out. So then he goes out into left field, and all he's thinking about is, oh my gosh, I'm going to get cut. My wife's going to get so mad at me. It's a contract year. This is awful. I'm going to have to sell my house. And all of a sudden, a hit comes his way. He misses it. There's an error. And so now he's thinking, oh my gosh, I struck out. I just now had an error. He's in the process. And another one comes his way. So he's got another error. So he just snowballs, right?
Gosh.
And what should happen is you strike out. Okay, it happens. You go to left field. Next play.
Right.
Same thing. So
Yeah.
he got to focus on the process. So
Yes.
knees bent, head up, glove ready.
Yes.
That's what you focus
Yeah.
on, as opposed to what just happened.
Right.
But it's easy though to get mired in that, right? In the day to day where maybe a client's not so happy.
Right.
You get a review and it's not great.
I take
right?
it to heart.
Yes, I do too.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I take
Yeah.
it so personally.
Yeah.
So I try, but it's and actually it was funny. I had this conversation with my oldest daughters who are twins, and I said, that this is something that I continue to work on. And one of them had something come up. I don't know, they had an assignment they didn't do as well as they anticipated or had hoped. And, she came home and she was like, oh, I'm just feeling so down about this. what do you do? Like we talked about this the other day, and I said, I just try to keep it in perspective. Like this is one little blip.
Yep.
And, look at all of the things that you've done well. Look at all of the accomplishments that you've achieved, and look at where you're going. Look at the opportunities that you have. Look at the blessings that you have, today. You're loved. You have all,
Gratitude is very powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
An attitude of gratitude is something, so important.
Yeah. So Jason calls, like, you actually mentioned what you've done well. He calls them done wells. So like, what are the things you've done well?
Yeah.
Like, so whenever I'm talking to, like, okay, he'll go and like, okay, what are you really proud of right now? What's something you're working on that you're like really like you're so happy that you've done? Or like, so we kind of focus on that stuff, and he always starts with that. And he's got a whole like process every day to like focus on like the things you've done well, even the little things, even if you move things up forward an inch,
Right?
And it's a nice little reset where you
And you're reframing. Yeah, you have to. I think that's important, especially as a business owner, as a lawyer. That we have that reset button, and that we give ourselves that grace, to make mistakes. But as long as we're learning from it and we're using it as an opportunity, one of the things that we do, or that we've done at home and in our office, is we used to call it the pit and the peak. So like, what's the pit? Like, what was the pit of your week? So like the low point, and what was the peak? So like, let's talk about, something that, was a low point, but then let's talk about something to celebrate. We actually changed the terms to highlight an opportunity. Because, we don't want to focus on the negative, but like, okay, so what was the opportunity that we had? And so when we have our team meetings, which we have a monthly team meeting, we all go around, everyone goes around and shares their opportunity for the month or the week. It doesn't have to be the whole month, but, what was the opportunity? What did we learn from it? How can we be better? How can we improve? Yeah. And what was the highlight? What is something that we can celebrate?
So we do something very similar with the firm about that. Like with our leadership board, we call it growth opportunities. Our first iteration was, because it's a Kanban board, it was issues, and we changed it from issues to growth opportunities.
Yep. Exactly.
That's what it is. Like, is your opportunity to grow,
right.
And it might not be great right now, but it's, it doesn't have to stay that way.
Right.
So they are opportunities. I think that's a good way of viewing it.
Yeah, always an opportunity for growth.
So, I mean, you seem like you've generally always been pretty positive. So, where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I've seen how a negative mindset can have an impact, and like how your thoughts are so powerful.
Yeah.
And when I find myself, kind of going into that space of negativity, I know it's not going to serve me. Sure. And so I just try to keep that as a reminder, and I have my bad days. Yeah. And I think that that's something that people don't always acknowledge, because, other people that are looking, they see what I post on social media, they see all the nice, happy, fun things.
Yeah.
But, there are days where I have tough times. I have my little breakdowns and frustrations, and, where I am not at my best, but I try to, get past it. I try to do something that's going to, like reframe or give me a different perspective. I think, like we were talking about earlier, just going back to that, that gratitude, something that you can appreciate. What is a blessing that you're grateful for today? And things are not always going to go our way, but we just got to focus on what we can do and what is positive, and that's where we end up being able to overcome those challenges.
Yeah. How do you remember, like, whenever you were a kid, like your dad was going through all that? Like, how do you remember him handling it?
My dad is a dreamer.
Yeah.
And he's always been.
That's where this is coming from.
I think so.
Yes.
Like he's always been very optimistic and always confident. I never saw him waver in his who he knew he was, and, what the outcome was going to be. Now, it didn't always work out, and things did, fall apart at different points. But even with things not working out for him, he's always had that mindset, like, I can do it. I can make this happen, and I'm the person to do it. So I think that just, seeing him be confident, even in the face of not, things not working out the way that he had planned, I think that kind of gave me that perspective.
Yeah. So I want to wrap up on this, because you were just talking about the dreamer part, and that's why I want to end with this. Is that I want you to be able to come back and listen to this episode at your 10-year mark, which is 2027, right? Okay. So let's give it January 1st, 2028.
Okay.
Where do you want to see the firm on January 1st, 2028? Like what do you want to make sure that you have accomplished? Like where do you want it to be at that point? Because I want you to be able to come back and listen to this episode and be like, I did it. You know what I mean? So where do you want it to be?
I would like to see the firm. So January 1st, 2028, that means that my daughters will be attorneys, licensed attorneys. So I will want to support their growth and have them in a place, that has their path set to be able to ultimately take over the firm. I want to be in a new office space. I'd like to be in our own building that we get to build, that is able to accommodate capacity-wise, the growth that we're expecting. I'd like to be able to have, I think it ultimately boils down to, like having that strong team in place where I know, whether I'm in the office or not, that, they're running the firm and things are being handled the way that they should be, that we're continuing to serve clients, in this community and, expanding out, doing other things, including expanding, women decision makers, to other cities. I think just continuing to grow the platform so that I can be out, doing more things like this.
So what is your message to yourself on when you listen to this on January 1st of 2028, what's your message? So give a message to yourself. You're talking to yourself, your future self. What's your message?
My future self, I would say, keep at it. I think it's been a long road and there's been a lot of sacrifices, but take a moment to be grateful and celebrate where you are and continue to push those goals forward because you can do it.
Shane Jasmine Young, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.